Hello, how are you? Hope you're holding fine. My name is Sherlock, and in this particular episode, I'm going to take you through a sample answered essay question, and that is from A Silent Song and Other Stories. This one here is going to be from The Ghosts by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. Chimamanda is one of my best African writer from Nigeria, and she has featured in many articles, and again in other field of literature. She has also featured in one of the TED conference talk where she gives a speech on the danger of a single story. In other words, how people form biased opinion about a place, a group of people, a person, and even a thing. And therefore, she has also featured in these Silent Song and Other Stories. And in this one here, she talks about ghosts. So briefly, hoping that and working on the premise that you've read this particular text, I'm going to presume that you've read it comprehensively, and therefore the things that you're going to be talking about therein, they need to really make sense. Buckle up and brace up for the same. In case you're coming across this work, is your first time, you bumped across this work accidentally, or a good friend of yours did refer you to this particular channel, then definitely this is one channel that you would like to hook up yourself with so that you don't miss our future updates and uploads. You only do that by giving a thumbs up, that's a like, a subscription, and of course a sharing with also others that you know this work will be of value. Therefore, without that much further ado, let's dive into it. What is an essay? Most likely a sample essay question and plus a model response over the same. Therefore, welcome to Chimamanda Adichie's Ghost. War, I'll dig straight into it. War causes a lot of harm and therefore should be avoided at any cost. Validate this statement basing illustrations from Chimamanda Adichie's Ghost. War causes a lot of harm and therefore should be avoided at any cost. Validate this statement basing illustrations from Chimamanda Adichie's Ghosts. So let's have our nutty graph, our introductory phrase up there. Whenever parties engage in some form of fighting, there are grave implications that follow as is seen in Ghosts, where the civil war that happened in July 6th of 1967 caused suffering and pain to the people. To start with, war is seen to cause displacement of several people. Many people are forced to run away from their country and their homes when the Civil War broke. Professor James and Ikena's meeting takes James down the memory lane where he recounts how they were forced to evacuate Nzuka in a hurry in July 6th of the year 1967 when the war began. Through their conversation, that is Nzuka and that is James and Ikena. Through their conversation, we learned that Ikena has lived in Sweden ever since the war began and has only come back to Nzuka recently. He discloses that he was flown out on a Red Cross plane, just like many other children had been airlifted to Gabon. Professor James did not escape the displacement since he and his wife, Ebere, had to move to America when the war broke out. Many people are seen to have been forced to leave their motherland as a result of the Civil War. Secondly, we see that war leads to loss of lives. Several people had their lives cut short due to the Civil War that broke out. The return of Ikena comes as a surprise to Professor James since Ikena was thought to have died in the war. It is no wonder that Prof initially thought of throwing a handful of sand at him, just like his people did to ensure that it was not a ghost. Actual loss of life is seen through Ikena's family. While explaining to Prof the reason why he never returned to Nzuka after the war, Ikena tells him that his whole family was killed when Orlu was bombed during the war, therefore he had nobody to come back to. That is their place. It is not just Ikena who lost loved ones, but Prof too. His first daughter, Zik, died in the war. He tells Ikena that the war took Zik. It is no wonder they named their second daughter Ngiruka, which means what is ahead is better. Thirdly, war is seen to cause massive destruction and loss of properties. When Professor James and his wife first returned to Nzuka when the war ended in 1970, they noticed major destructions that had occurred. Professor recounts how they found their house and items destroyed. His books were lying in front of the gate, his mathematical annals torn and used as a tissue paper, the bathtub used as toilet, and their photos ripped and their frames broken. The massive destruction of their house was too much that they had to be assigned a different house in a different street to avoid seeing their old house. In the process of their house being destroyed, they lose their piano that belonged to Ebere, the wife, remember? Professor also remembers the landscape of drove back to Nzuka after the war. The massive destructions recounted by Professor shows how destructive war really is. Lastly, war causes psychological and physical suffering with lives, with nightmares within the victims. I think that's good students supposed to be physical suffering of the lives, which is accompanied with the nightmares of the victims themselves, the victims of the circumstances. Now, those who experience war and sad memories of it, especially those ones who experience war and the sad memories of the same. Professor James is seen to have lived with the memories of the war. He easily remembers every detail of the war as he recounts it to Ikena. Ikena has suffered psychologically, as is seen from the fact that he lost all of his family in Orlu, hence the reason that he does not return to Nzuka. His psychological suffering is further seen from the fact that he never remarries after the war took his wife. Further evidence of psychological pain is seen where Professor observes how his people avoided the topic of war, and if they engaged in it, it was with some vagueness. The naming of their second daughter, Ngiruka, what is ahead is better, also shows the pain that Professor and Ebere, more explanation there, were trying to avoid. The people also suffer physical pain. Professor James remembers how a wounded soldier was shoved in their car on the day they returned to Nzuka. War causes loss of lives, displacement of people, and destruction of properties, among other effects. People should therefore strive to live in harmony and avoid it at all costs. Thank you very much. A very big thank you. This has been Liberty Media. You can reach me through those tiny details that I began. Sherlock is my name. I've been narrating through. SherlockJohn@gmail is my tiny little email. You can reach me through for further inquiries and maybe info. And also, you can reach me through my WhatsApp digits. Those are the ones that I still. So each and every time, anytime, I'll try my best to get back to you. It has been really, really nice to have you as my audience. And above all, I would wish that you recommend to this work to more of other people, especially those ones that literature is their cup of coffee. And above all, I just want to wish you the very, very best in your endeavors. And cheers till we meet again.